Seeds of the Silent Earth, Chapter 1, Page 1. The wind, a restless wanderer, swept across the skeletal remains of a once bustling Texas town. Buildings clawed at the sky, hollowed eyes staring out at a world stripped bare. Rust-colored dust, the remnants of a life long gone, painted the air, clinging to the cracked asphalt and the withered husks of forgotten cars. This was Colleen, or at least what was left of it. Elara, her brown hair the color of parched earth, sat perched on a crumbling brick wall, her gaze fixed on the horizon. At 22, her face already bore the etchings of a life lived under a harsh sun, lines that spoke of resilience and a quiet determination. The world had shrunk, its vibrant tapestry reduced to muted shades of survival. The Great Sickness, they called it, a swift and merciless plague that had swept across the globe, leaving behind a desolate silence. She remembered the whispers, the growing fear that had snaked its way through their small community on the outskirts of Killeen. The news reports, crackling with static, spoke of a virus, a contagion that devoured its victims from the inside out. Then came the fever, the coughs that rattled in the night, the bodies piling up in the streets, her family, her friends, her neighbors, all gone, swallowed by the unforgiving earth. Page 2. Elara closed her eyes, the memories a bitter sting. She had been spared, a cruel twist of fate that left her both grateful and burdened. Grateful for life, yet burdened by the weight of loss, by the responsibility to rebuild in a world that had crumbled. She looked down at her hands, calloused and strong from years of working the land. Her father, a farmer with a deep love for the soil, had taught her the secrets of the earth, the rhythm of the seasons, the delicate dance between humans and nature. Now those lessons were her lifeline, her only hope in a world without electricity, without the conveniences that had once seemed indispensable. Her village, a cluster of makeshift shelters cobbled together from salvaged wood and scrap metal, clung to life on the outskirts of the ghost town. They were a small band of survivors, barely 20 souls, their faces etched with the same grief, the same uncertainty. Yet, within their eyes, Elara saw a flicker of resilience, a spark that refused to be extinguished. Page 3. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows that danced like macabre specters. A chill wind whistled through the skeletal buildings, carrying with it the whispers of the lost. Elara shivered, pulling her threadbare shawl tighter around her shoulders. It was time to return to the village, to face the hollow stares, the gnawing hunger that gnawed at their bellies. She walked slowly, her boots crunching on the gravel, each step a heavy echo in the silence. The air was thick with the smell of dust and decay, a constant reminder of the world they had lost. Yet beneath it all, Elara detected another scent, faint but persistent, the smell of damp earth, of life clinging to survival. As she approached the village, she saw a small group gathered around a flickering fire, their faces illuminated by the dancing flames. Old Man Finn, his eyes cloudy with age, sat hunched on a fallen log, his voice a low rumble as he recounted tales of the past. Maya, her belly swollen with child, stirred a pot of meager stew, her movements slow and deliberate. Page 4. Elara joined the circle, her presence a silent comfort. They shared their meager meal, the silence punctuated by the crackling of the fire and the occasional cough. There was little to say, the weight of their loss a suffocating blanket. Yet, in the shared warmth of the fire, in the simple act of eating together, there was a sense of community, a fragile bond that held them together. After the meal, Elara helped Maya settle for the night, then retreated to her own small shelter. It was a cramped space, barely large enough for a bed and a small table, but it was hers, a sanctuary in a world gone mad. She lay down, her body weary, her mind racing. The whispers of the lost echoed in her ears, a chorus of sorrow and regret. But beneath the grief, Elara heard another voice, a whisper of hope, a call to action. She knew that survival was not enough. They needed to rebuild, to create a new world from the ashes of the old. Page 5. Elara closed her eyes, her thoughts turning to the seeds she had salvaged from her father's abandoned farm. Seeds of corn, beans, squash, the staples of a life long gone. She imagined a field of green, a vibrant tapestry of life woven into the barren landscape. It was a distant dream, a fragile hope in a world of despair. But it was a dream worth fighting for, a hope that could sustain them through the long, dark night. She drifted off to sleep, the whispers of the lost fading into the background. In their place, she heard the rustling of leaves, the chirping of crickets, the gentle patter of rain on parched earth. It was the music of life, a symphony of renewal, a promise whispered on the wind. Seeds of the Silent Earth, Chapter 2, The Goat's Gift. Page 6. The first rays of dawn painted the sky in hues of pale orange and dusty rose. Elara rose, her body stiff from sleeping on the hard floor. Today was the day she would introduce the village to the true value of their goats. She led them to the small enclosure where the goats were kept, their bleating a welcome sound in the stillness. "Today, we learn about the goat's gift," she announced, her voice strong and clear. "Not just milk, not just meat, but something even more essential to our survival." She pointed to the piles of droppings scattered throughout the enclosure. "This," she declared, scooping a handful of the pellet-like waste, "is the foundation of our future." A ripple of unease spread through the villagers. They had always regarded animal waste as a nuisance, a foul byproduct of survival. Now Elara was presenting it as a treasure. Page 7. "But it's just waste," a woman named Mara stammered, her brow furrowed. Elara rose, her eyes meeting Mara's. "It's transformed waste, Mara, nature's way of recycling. Without the fertilizers of the old world, we must learn to work with what we have." She led them to a pit dug into the earth, a layered compost heap in its early stages. "We mix the goat droppings with dried leaves, vegetable scraps, even ash from our fires. This creates a rich, fertile soil, a food for our plants." She demonstrated, carefully layering the materials, explaining the process of decomposition and the role of microorganisms. The villagers watched, their initial skepticism slowly giving way to curiosity. Alara's passion was contagious, her knowledge practical and grounded. She spoke of the importance of aeration, of maintaining the right moisture balance, of allowing nature to work its magic. Page 8. "It will take time," she cautioned, "but with patience and care, this compost will nourish our crops, allowing us to grow food even in this harsh land." That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the villagers began to gather their own scraps, their eyes filled with a newfound hope. The goat, once merely a source of milk and meat, had become a symbol of renewal. Over the next few days, Elara and the villagers worked together to build more compost heaps, experimenting with different combinations of materials. They learned to turn the compost regularly, to monitor its moisture content, to recognize the signs of successful decomposition. One morning, as Elara turned a heap of compost, she noticed a rich, earthy smell, a sweet aroma that filled the air. She scooped up a handful of the dark, crumbly material, its texture soft and yielding. "It's ready," she announced, her voice filled with excitement. "The compost is ready." Page 9. The villagers gathered around, their faces lit with anticipation. They watched as Elara carefully spread the compost around the base of a struggling tomato plant, its leaves yellowed and withered. Within days, the plant began to show signs of new growth, its leaves turning a vibrant green. The success of the compost was a turning point for the village. It was a tangible demonstration of Elara's knowledge, a testament to the power of nature's cycles. The villagers began to see the world in a new light, to appreciate the interconnectedness of all living things. They started to collect every scrap of organic waste, every fallen leaf, every bit of ash from their fires. They built more compost heaps, experimenting with different methods, learning from their mistakes and celebrating their successes. Page 10. Elara also showed them how to create a simple, nutrient-rich liquid fertilizer by steeping goat droppings in water. This compost tea was used to water their seedlings, giving them a boost of essential nutrients. The liquid fertilizer was a quick way to help the plants. The village was slowly transforming, becoming a place of innovation and resourcefulness. The goats, once just animals for food, were now a vital part of the ecosystem. Their droppings a precious resource, their milk a source of nourishment, their presence a symbol of hope. The goat's gift was more than just fertilizer. It was the gift of knowledge, the gift of community, the gift of a future. Chapter 3. The Sorghum Secret, page 11. With the success of the compost and the growing understanding of sustainable practices, Elara turned her attention to the plants themselves. Today's lesson was about sorghum, a hardy, drought-resistant grain that could thrive in the harsh Texas climate. She led the villagers to a small plot of land where a few stalks of sorghum stood tall and proud. "This," she began, her voice echoing across the parched earth, "is our future. This is sorghum, a grain that can withstand the heat, the lack of water, the very challenges we face." She showed them the thick, fibrous stalks, the broad leaves that captured every precious drop of dew, the clusters of seeds that held the promise of future harvests. "We will learn to cultivate this grain, to save its seeds, to ensure its survival and ours." Page 12. Elara demonstrated the techniques for planting sorghum, explaining the importance of spacing and depth. She showed them how to prepare the soil, using the nutrient-rich compost they had created. She emphasized the need for careful watering, using only the rainwater they had collected. "We must learn to work with the land, to understand its rhythms," she explained, her fingers gently tracing the contours of the soil. "We cannot force it to yield, but we can nurture it, guide it, and it will provide for us." She taught them the importance of seed saving, showing them how to select the strongest, healthiest plants and carefully harvest their seeds. "These seeds," she said, holding a handful of the tiny grains, "are our legacy. They are the promise of future harvests, the guarantee of our survival." Page 13. The challenges were immense. Water was scarce, the heat relentless. The sun beat down on the parched earth, baking the soil, withering the leaves. Elara and the villagers worked tirelessly, watering the plants with precious rainwater, shading them from the midday sun with makeshift shelters. One afternoon, a dust storm swept across the land, a swirling vortex of sand and grit that blotted out the sun. The villagers huddled in their shelters, their faces covered, their eyes stinging. The wind howled, the dust swirled, and the world outside was a chaotic blur. When the storm finally subsided, the villagers emerged, their faces grim, their hearts heavy. The sorghum plants were battered, their leaves torn, their stalks bent, but they had survived. Page 14. Elara surveyed the damage, her eyes filled with a quiet determination. "We will not be defeated," she declared, her voice strong and clear. "We will mend what is broken. We will protect what is left. We will not give up." They worked together, carefully straightening the bent stalks, removing the torn leaves, watering the plants with the last of their rainwater. They built windbreaks from salvaged wood and cloth, shielding the plants from future storms. Slowly, gradually, the sorghum plants began to recover. New leaves sprouted, new stalks emerged, new clusters of seeds formed. The villagers watched, their hearts filled with a renewed sense of hope. Page 15. The harvest was small, but it was enough. Enough to feed the village, enough to save seeds for the next planting, enough to prove that even in the harshest of conditions, life could find a way to thrive. Elara gathered the villagers, holding up a handful of the harvested sorghum. "This," she said, her voice filled with emotion, "is our victory. This is the fruit of our labor, the reward for our perseverance. We have learned to work with the land, to respect its power, to embrace its gifts." They shared a simple meal of sorghum porridge, a taste of the future, a promise of abundance. The sorghum, once just a grain, had become a symbol of resilience, a testament to the power of knowledge, the strength of community, the enduring hope of survival.
I hope you found that entertaining. If you did, please hit that like button. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any of my future videos. I'm always trying to bring you new chapters. See you next time.
Chapter 4. The Rabbit's Reward. Page 16. With the successful sorghum harvest and the burgeoning understanding of composting, Elara introduced the villagers to a new, vital component of their survival: rabbits. "They are prolific breeders," she explained, gesturing towards the small, fenced enclosure, and require minimal space. "In this world of scarcity, they offer a sustainable source of protein and fur, both essential for our continued existence." She held up a healthy rabbit, its nose twitching, its eyes bright and alert. "We will construct hutches using salvaged wood and wire, providing them with shelter and protection from predators, ensuring their well-being and our future supply." Elara emphasized the importance of creating a sanitary environment, explaining how disease could quickly decimate their livestock. "Cleanliness is paramount," she stated, "not just for the rabbits, but for our own health as well." She outlined the plan to build the hutches on raised platforms, preventing dampness and facilitating waste removal. Page 17. The construction of the rabbit hutches became a communal endeavor, a testament to the villagers' growing sense of unity. Everyone contributed, scavenging materials from the ruins of Killeen, skillfully weaving wire mesh, and carefully hammering nails into place. Elara, with her practical knowledge and patient guidance, taught them how to create simple feeders and waterers using repurposed containers, ensuring the rabbits had constant access to sustenance. "We must be resourceful," she reminded them, finding new uses for the discarded remnants of the old world. The most significant challenge, as always, was securing a consistent and sustainable food source. Elara demonstrated how to gather prickly pear cactus, meticulously removing the spines with tongs and knives. She explained the process of drying grasses and weeds, creating a hay-like feed that could be stored for the leaner months. "We must learn to utilize the bounty of the land," she said, "and to preserve it for times of scarcity." She also began experimenting with fermenting corn stalks, creating a nutritious silage that could supplement the rabbit's diet. Page 18. As the rabbit population began to multiply, Elara taught the villagers the essential skills of processing and storing animal products. She demonstrated the humane way to butcher the rabbits, showing them how to skin and clean the carcasses with respect and efficiency. "We must honor the animals that sustain us," she said, her voice filled with a quiet reverence. "We take only what we need, and we ensure that nothing is wasted." She explained the importance of preserving the meat, using techniques like drying and smoking, ensuring a long-term food supply. The villagers learned to tan the rabbit hides using a simple mixture of ash and water, transforming them into supple, durable leather. They spun the soft fur into yarn, weaving it into warm blankets and clothing, providing much-needed protection against the harsh Texas winters. The rabbits, once simply animals, became an integral part of their survival, providing food, clothing, and a valuable lesson in resourcefulness. Page 19. One evening, after a long day of labor, Elara prepared a simple rabbit stew, seasoned with wild herbs and roots gathered from the surrounding countryside. The aroma of the simmering stew filled the air, a tantalizing scent that made their mouths water and their stomachs rumble. They gathered around the fire, their faces illuminated by the flickering flames, their eyes filled with anticipation. The stew, though simple, was a feast, a reminder of the abundance that could be found even in a world of scarcity. As they ate, they shared stories and laughter, their voices echoing through the stillness of the night. The rabbit stew was more than just a meal. It was a symbol of their resilience, a testament to their ability to adapt and thrive in the face of adversity. It was a moment of shared joy, a reminder of the community they had built together. Page 20. The rabbits, like the goats in the sorghum, had become a powerful symbol of hope, a tangible representation of their ability to rebuild and thrive. Elara knew that the path ahead would be fraught with challenges, but she also knew that they were not alone. They had each other, they had their knowledge, and they had the land. As the moon cast its silvery glow over the village, Elara looked at the faces of her community, faces that were no longer gaunt with despair, but lit with a quiet determination. They were survivors, they were farmers, they were builders. They were the seeds of a new world, planted in the silent earth, waiting to bloom. She knew that the knowledge they were gaining was priceless. She knew that the future of humanity was in their hands. They would continue to work hard and help each other. They would make a new, better world. Chapter 5. The Water's Wisdom. Page 21. Water, the essence of life, was their most precious resource. Elara knew that survival hinged on their ability to conserve and find more of it. She gathered the villagers at the edge of a shallow depression, a natural low point in the landscape. "Here," she declared, her voice carrying across the parched earth, "we will dig a well. We must learn to find water where it hides, to tap into the underground streams that flow beneath our feet." She demonstrated how to use salvaged metal sheets and wooden planks to reinforce the well's walls, preventing collapse. "We must be resourceful," she emphasized, using every scrap of material we can find. Elara explained the importance of digging strategically, choosing locations where rainwater naturally collected. She also showed them how to construct rainwater collectors using salvaged tarps and gutters, maximizing every drop of precipitation. Every drop counts, she reminded them, especially in this arid climate. They used pieces of cloth to filter the rainwater and learned to boil it to make sure it was safe. Page 22. The digging was arduous, the earth hard and unyielding. The villagers worked in shifts, their hands calloused and blistered, their brows slick with sweat. Elara, drawing on her knowledge of geology and hydrology, guided their efforts, pointing out subtle signs of moisture in the soil. She remembered her father's lessons, his deep understanding of the land, and she applied them with renewed purpose. One afternoon, while exploring the ruins of the Colleen Library, Elara discovered a hidden cache of weathered books on agriculture and engineering. She spent hours poring over the pages, deciphering faded diagrams and handwritten notes, seeking forgotten knowledge that could aid their survival. She found information on ancient water purification techniques, methods for building simple irrigation systems using buried clay pots and drip lines, and strategies for conserving water in arid climates. Elara also learned about deep well construction. She now had a few more ideas on how to improve their water supply. Page 23. That evening, under the flickering light of a salvaged oil lamp, Elara gathered the villagers and shared her discoveries. She explained the principles of water management, the importance of protecting watersheds, and the need to use water wisely and responsibly. Knowledge is our greatest weapon, she declared, our shield against the challenges we face. The villagers listened intently, their eyes filled with a renewed sense of hope. They implemented a system of water rationing, ensuring that everyone had enough to drink and that the crops received the water they needed. They constructed small dams to capture runoff during the infrequent rains, storing it for drier times. Elara also taught them how to create a simple water filter using charcoal, sand, and gravel, improving the quality of their drinking water. They also began to collect dew from the plants in the morning. Page 24. One day, while working near the well, they heard a distant murmur, a sound that broke the silence of the desolate landscape. Elara, her senses heightened, signaled for the villagers to stop. In the distance, a group of figures emerged from the shimmering heat haze, their silhouettes wavering like mirages. They were ragged, their clothing tattered and stained, their faces gaunt and etched with hardship. A sense of unease settled over the village, a primal instinct warning of danger. Elara, however, stepped forward, her hand raised in a gesture of peace. "Hold," she called out, her voice clear and firm. "Let us see who they are." As the figures drew closer, their features became clearer. They were a motley crew, a mix of men, women, and children, their eyes filled with a desperate hunger. They approached cautiously, their movements hesitant, their hands empty. Page 25. "We mean no harm," a man with a grizzled beard called out, his voice hoarse and weary. "We are travelers, seeking shelter and sustenance. We heard rumors of a village, a place where people still lived." Elara, her heart pounding, exchanged a glance with the villagers. They were wary, their eyes filled with suspicion. But Elara, remembering the lessons of community and compassion, decided to take a risk. "You are welcome to rest," she said, her voice steady. "But we have little to spare. We are all struggling to survive." The travelers, their faces etched with relief, nodded gratefully. "We ask for nothing more than water and a place to rest," the man replied. "We are willing to work for our keep." Elara, after a brief discussion with the village elders, invited the newcomers to stay, provided they contributed to the community's efforts. The villagers, though initially hesitant, agreed, recognizing the potential benefits of additional hands and shared knowledge.
I hope you found that entertaining. If you did, please hit that like button. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any of my future videos. I'm always trying to bring you new chapters. See you next time.